Good evening, good morning, and good night. Welcome to Inappropriate Radio, and I'm your host, Tashana. Now let's get to this, guys. Sorry for all the shuffling around right now. Okay, so today's topic is gonna be about genetics, right? I'm gonna give you guys a disclaimer. Well, not a disclaimer, just a heads up. You might hear some noise, some thumping around. It is the day after Christmas. I have some smaller children up above me. They sound like they are enjoying their toys and stuff right now. And I'm literally right under the staircase, so people coming up and down, you might hear that, okay? No worries. Might hear a little yelling and screaming too. Okay, so let's get right into it. They say before we come to this realm that we agree to our assignments, whether it's good or bad, and this most definitely includes our families. Actually, our existence in this realm evolves heavily around your family, especially your ancestors. Your job is to find the link between your ancestors, your living relatives, as well as yourself. Now, when I started scripting, I started thinking about babies, right? About how babies that have probably crossed over can be your ancestor. Or how sometimes we say, this baby been here before, or, we observe a kid and we're like, it seemed like this baby has been here before, right? I started wondering if those babies can be our ancestors. Is it possible that those babies have unfinished business here and we're only here to wrap up some things or perhaps get some things started? I know that's a pretty harsh scenario analogy, but if you think about it, for just a small moment, the death of a child can totally disrupt a genetic sequence. It can either push you closer to God or cause you to self-destruct. Not to mention that the life that was lost can have been cut short, meaning that they may possibly have to come back here or, and start over, or possibly have been finishing off a job that they started elsewhere at another time. Now, when you think about this in regards to your lineage, this goes a long way beyond your color, your heritage, or your culture. Of course, your genes is your roots, right? But what I'm discussing goes way beyond that. I'm speaking on how the spirit world dictates who you are in a reality, because as we know, as above, so below, right? Everything that happens here, that manifests here, happens in the spirit world first. Now, I'll give you an example of what I mean of your genetics dictating who you are. We have gifts, and then we have talents, right? Some genes cause families to be a family of pastors, or a family of writers, or a family of comedians or singers, right? If you sang, right? And I mean their abilities, their natural abilities to just be exactly who they are, right? Their genes, allowing them to express these particular gifts. Those are gifts. And then you have talents. Same thing. When you see a family full of people who have cultivated a skill so much so that they can profit off of it and pass it down through their lineage, like dressing nice, or being a good driver, or being a good painter, or whatever may come to mind, for you. I mean, we've all witnessed the power of genetics. You've seen how you could look like a a ancestor. You've seen a black and white photo or some really old picture of a person that you may look exactly like, or your parent may look exactly like. And you've never met them, right? Or you may sound like them, or act like them, or walk like them, or whatever. Underneath all of that, is it possible that you've come here to complete a job or possibly start one? Okay. I'll give you another example. Have you ever been to like a family member's house and you've seen a kid that one of your little cousins or siblings have been hanging out with, but you already know this child? And it's possibly because you used to hang out with one of their relatives when you were younger. That's not by coincidence, guys. Somewhere in the spirit world, the ancestors have pushed these two bloodlines together because there is a genetic sequence that needs to be activated or linked together. And side note, it's important to note that not all of our ancestors serve our highest good, because sometimes activating certain genetic codes can actually remove certain energies from the chain. Now, that's for another segment. But for the sake of the topic, the activation can either bring up things that need to be healed, removed, or strengthened. Right? And side note, guys, you all might hear me using the term bloodline and genetics interchangeably, right? Because ultimately, it is the same thing. Now, think about the things you are attracted to, whether you have been exposed to them as a child, whether you exposed them to your child or not. The manner in which you indulge is going to be based on your genetic sequence. Now, the reason why all of this is important is because your bloodline or genes or whatever you want to call it will determine the type of warfare you are likely to attract. Now, we have witches, we have warlocks, we have mystics, a bunch of different species and groups out of many different star systems that we all come from. And we do come from them. Your horoscope will determine a lot of that, and it'll actually give you an idea of the star systems you may come from. Let's say you're a Sagittarius, your child is a Scorpio. Two different star systems, but the combination of those links may have come from, something way back when. And I'm not talking about biblical days or like Egyptian days, like the days of the Pharaoh. I'm talking different dimensions, different timelines, right? Different time, everything. Your ranking or ability to tap into those realms is all determined by your genes, right? By your genetics. Now, the combination of your parents linking together is like starting a whole new world. Now, because everything happens in the spirit world first and then manifests into the 3D, whether your parents made one of you or 12 of you, it's the same thing. Some assignments are so big and so vast that they can't be expressed through one vessel. They have to be broken down and, drawn out through many different vessels, multiple vessels. Now, even if those chains don't get linked together by blood, there is still some sort of connect, that has brought two or more families together that needs to be either built or healed. And I'll tell you what I mean. I'm not even going to say the death of a child. I'll say the birth of a child, right? I may have a kid by a man, right? My kid has brought two different families together. Now, let's say the man that I had a child with goes on to marry someone else and birth a new offspring, right? That new offspring has now brought more than two genetic sequences together. Now, they may not have been linked, but the crossing of the paths have caused, shifts, right, for all of the bloodlines. Now, don't get confused. I'm not saying that this offspring has nothing to do or something to do, with the links that have or have not crossed. What I'm trying to get you to realize is that your genes attract and bring about certain things. Now, some people use their powers for good, some people for bad. What I'm trying to get you to realize, which is definitely for another segment, is that your genetic sequence is going to determine a lot. Now, if you begin to invest in learning more about your lineage and where you come from and what's underlying in those genetic sequence, then you may be to activate and unlock certain codes, thus opening new worlds within yourselves that you may be able to express now, or you may pass them on through your children. I'm reading a book called Super Genes, and it talks about how the genetic sequence is so powerful, and the connection between the spirit and the body and the mind can activate genes that are in us that have yet to be brought out, or may have been, killed off or died down through the diet, through the environment, through certain behaviors like smoking and drinking, or I don't know the word, but when you have sex with your family member, right? It can break down the genetic incest. Thank you. How it can determine the activity and the behavior of the genes. I hope I didn't lose you guys with this, because this is very important, and this is a topic that actually may have to be broken down into more than 2 segments, because your genes has a lot to do with the warfare that you're going to encounter, that you have encountered, that you will encounter. And 9 times out of 10, if you're a high-ranking person like a mystic or a mermaid or a star seed or a psychic, a witch, whatever you want to call it, if you're tapped in and you're high-ranking in them realms, whether you use your powers for good or for bad, it's going to ultimately determine the warfare that you encounter, whether you're the one bringing up the warfare or you're the one fighting the warfare. It's definitely related to your genetics. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to start wrapping up, because this segment is only for 15 minutes. I want you guys to start looking at, your grandparents on both sides. Look at the horoscopes, of the people on both sides. Look at some of the things that your family members have gone through, that they've overcome, that they've been fighting, that your grandparents may have fought, that you're fighting. If you are aware of that, you may be able to stop your child or the next generation from going through that. So, just to wrap things up, you guys take care. Have a happy Sunday. Have a happy week. And happy learning, okay? I wish you guys well. Take care. Peace.